Captain Jack Harrison ran his hand along the worn metal railing of the U.S. Defiance Bridge. The ship had been his home for nearly 7 years, but even he had to admit she was showing her age. At 75 years old, the Defiant was considered ancient by modern standards. "Status report," Harrison said, his voice echoing in the surprisingly spacious bridge. Unlike the cramped command centers of newer ships, the Defiant was built when designers still believed captains needed room to think. "All systems operational, Captain," replied First Officer Diane Powell. She handed him a tablet displaying the ship's diagnostics. "Though engineering reports the port thrusters are running at 82% efficiency." Harrison nodded. "Tell Rodriguez to do what he can. We reach Jupiter Station in 3 days." Jupiter Station would likely be the Defiant's final destination. The ship was scheduled for decommissioning, deemed too outdated to serve in humanity's modern fleet. Harrison tried not to take it personally. The communication panel beeped urgently. "Captain, incoming priority message from Fleet Command," said communications specialist Kate Miller, her fingers dancing across her console. "On screen," Harrison ordered. The stern face of Admiral Susan Wright appeared on the main display. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and the lines around her eyes seemed deeper than when Harrison had last seen her. "Captain Harrison, there's been an attack on the Arcturus colony," Wright said without preamble. "We've lost contact with their main settlement." Before communications went down, they reported 7 unknown vessels in orbit. Harrison straightened his back. "The Voidborn." Wright nodded grimly. "We believe so. This matches their pattern from the Proxima incident last month." The Voidborn were a mysterious species that had appeared at the edges of human space just 6 months ago. So far, all attempts at communication had failed, and each encounter had ended in violence. "What are my orders, Admiral?" Harrison asked, though he already suspected the answer. "The Defiant is the only ship within range that can reach Arcturus in time. The colony has 15,000 civilians, Jack. They need help now." Powell stepped forward. "Admiral, with all due respect, the Defiant is scheduled for decommissioning. We're running on outdated systems." Wright's expression hardened. "I'm well aware of the Defiant's status, Commander, but the Coalition Council has been hesitant to commit their more advanced ships to what they consider a human problem." Harrison felt a flash of anger. The Galactic Coalition, formed between humans and 3 alien species, was supposed to be an alliance of equals. But lately, it seemed humanity was the junior partner, despite providing much of the Coalition's industrial capacity. "We'll set course immediately," Harrison said. Wright looked relieved. "The nearest Coalition battle group can reach you in 4 days. Just hold the line until they arrive." After the Admiral signed off, Powell turned to Harrison. "4 days is a long time against 7 enemy ships, sir." Harrison moved to the captain's chair and pressed the shipwide comm. "All hands, battle stations, set course for Arcturus colony, maximum speed." As the crew rushed to their positions, Weapons Officer Greg Johnson approached Harrison. "Captain, I've reviewed the reports from Proxima. The Voidborn ships have energy shielding that our standard weapons can barely dent." "Then we'll have to get creative," Harrison replied. "What about the old Mark IV torpedoes in Storage Bay 3? Johnson looked surprised. "The nuclear warheads. Those haven't been used in combat in 30 years. And that means the Voidborn won't have defenses designed against them," Harrison said. "Have Rodriguez pull them out of storage. I want them inspected and ready." As the Defiant accelerated away from Jupiter, Harrison stared at the colony's information on his display. 15,000 lives. Families. Children. All depending on his outdated ship and crew. "They think we're obsolete," he said quietly to Powell. "Let's prove them wrong." Powell gave a small smile. "The Defiant may be old, sir, but she's got heart." Harrison nodded as he felt the familiar vibration of the engines ramping up to full power. Maybe the Defiant wasn't the newest or the shiniest ship in the fleet, but she was tough. She was reliable. And right now, she was exactly where she needed to be. Estimated arrival at Arcturus. 68 hours, announced the navigation officer. Then we have 68 hours to prepare for the fight of our lives, Harrison said. Let's make them count. The 3-day journey to Arcturus stretched before the crew of the U.S. Defiant like an endless road. Every hour counted, and Captain Jack Harrison knew it. He walked through the narrow corridors of his ship, stopping to speak with crew members at their stations. Morale needed to be high for what lay ahead. "How are those torpedoes coming along?" Harrison asked as he entered the engineering section. The room hummed with activity, smelling of machined oil and hot metal. Chief Engineer Alan Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead with a rag. 6 Mark IV torpedoes operational, Captain. The 7th has a guidance system I don't trust. Better to have 6 good ones than 7 questionable ones. Harrison nodded. Good call. What about the engines? I've squeezed another 3% efficiency out of them, Rodriguez said with pride. She's old, but she knows when to step up. Harrison patted the wall affectionately. That she does. In the mess hall, Harrison found First Officer Diane Powell studying reports on her tablet. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept much. Any insights? He asked, sitting across from her with a cup of coffee. Powell pushed her red hair behind her ear. I've been analyzing the Proxima incident. The Voidborn tactics are odd. They use advanced weapons but basic maneuvers, almost like they rely too heavily on their technology. A weakness we might exploit, Harrison mused. What about their ships? 7 identical vessels, based on the colony's initial report. They absorb energy weapons, which is why the Coalition's fancy lasers had limited effect at Proxima. Harrison sipped his coffee. But our old girl doesn't rely solely on energy weapons. Exactly, Powell said with a slight smile. Sometimes old-fashioned beats cutting edge. On the 2nd day, Harrison called his senior staff to the tactical room. A holographic display showed the Arcturus system. Kate, what's the latest on communications? Harrison asked. Communications specialist Kate Miller frowned. Still nothing from the colony. But I've been studying the Voidborn transmissions from previous encounters. There's a pattern to them. Not a language exactly. More like what? Weapons Officer Greg Johnson prompted. Like mathematical equations, Miller said. I think they might communicate through some kind of mathematical language. Harrison considered this. Can we use that somehow? Miller shook her head. Not yet. But if I get more samples during the encounter, maybe. Keep working on it, Harrison said. Greg, weapons status. Johnson stood straighter. All standard weapons at 100%. The Mark IV torpedoes are loaded and ready. I've also restored the old point defense system. The railguns? Powell asked, surprised. Those haven't been used in decades. Johnson smiled. They're outdated but reliable. And they might surprise the Voidborn, who probably expect modern defenses. Harrison nodded approvingly. Good thinking. Let's use everything we've got. By the 3rd day, tension filled the ship. Harrison found himself on the observation deck, staring at the stars streaking by. The door opened behind him. Captain, Rodriguez said, joining him at the window. Can't sleep. Too much on my mind, Harrison admitted. 15,000 civilians, and only us standing between them and the Voidborn. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. My grandfather served on ships like the Defiant during the First Contact War. He used to say that newer isn't always better. Your grandfather was a wise man. The Coalition thinks we're outdated because our ships aren't as sleek or powerful as theirs, Rodriguez continued. But humans have something they don't. What's that? Harrison asked. Adaptability. We make do with what we have. We find solutions where others see only problems. Harrison smiled slightly. Let's hope that's enough. The ship's comm system came to life. Captain to the bridge, Powell's voice announced. We're approaching Arcturus system. Harrison and Rodriguez shared a look before hurrying to the bridge. As they entered, The main screen showed a distant star growing larger. "Tactical view," Harrison ordered. The screen changed to show 7 black ships in orbit around a blue-green planet. Flashes of light indicated weapons fire directed at the surface. "We're too late to prevent the attack," Powell said grimly. "But not too late to stop it," Harrison replied. "Battle stations. All hands prepare for combat. Let's show these Voidborn what an outdated human warship can do." The bridge of the U.S. Defiant fell silent as the 7 Voidborn ships came into clear view on the main screen. They were unlike anything the crew had seen before. The alien vessels were shaped like smooth black diamonds, each one about twice the size of the Defiant. They seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making them appear like holes cut into the fabric of space itself. "Scan those ships," Captain Harrison ordered. "I want to know what we're up against." Officer Powell worked at her console. "Energy readings are off the charts, Captain. Their weapons are far more powerful than anything reported at Proxima." Harrison's jaw tightened. "Kate, open a channel. All frequencies." Kate Miller nodded. "Channel open, sir." Harrison stood tall. "This is Captain Jack Harrison of the Earth vessel Defiant. You are attacking a civilian colony. Cease fire immediately and withdraw from this system." The bridge crew waited. Seconds ticked by in tense silence. "No response, Captain," Miller reported. "But I am detecting some kind of transmission between their ships. It's mathematical, like I thought. Complex equations. They're talking to each other about us," Harrison said. "What about the colony? Any contact?" Miller shook her head. "Nothing clear. There's a weak emergency signal from the southern continent. It looks like some colonists may have found shelter in the mining tunnels." Harrison made his decision. "Helm, take us between those ships and the planet. Greg, power up all weapons systems that hold fire." The Defiant moved forward, its engines pushing the old ship to its limits. As they approached, they could see the Voidborn weapons firing down at the planet's surface, beams of purple energy that left smoking craters where they hit. "They're targeting the main settlement," Powell said, her voice tight. "Population centers. This isn't a resource raid. It's extermination." Harrison's hands gripped the arms of his chair. "Not while we're here. Position us directly in their line of fire." The helm officer looked back nervously. "Sir." "Do it," Harrison ordered. "They want the colony. They'll have to go through us first." The Defiant slid into position between the Voidborn ships and the planet. The effect was immediate. The alien vessels stopped firing at the surface and turned as one toward the human ship. "They've noticed us," Greg Johnson said from the weapons station. "All 7 ships are changing formation. They're spreading out to surround us." Harrison nodded. "As expected. Kate, try the channel again. Tell them we're here to protect the colony, and we will defend it." Miller sent the message, but the response was immediate and not what anyone hoped for. A burst of purple energy shot from the Lid Voidborn ship, passing just meters from the Defiant's hull. "That was a warning shot," Powell said. Harrison disagreed. "No, that was poor aim. They expected us to have standard coalition shielding. They don't know what they're dealing with yet." As if to prove Harrison right, all 7 ships began moving into attack positions. Their sleek forms glided through space with unnerving precision. "They're coordinating," Johnson observed, "moving like a single unit." Harrison watched them carefully. "Alan, how's our power reserve?" 96%, Captain," Rodriguez replied over the comm. "The old reactors are running hot but stable." "Good. We may need everything she's got." Harrison turned to Powell. "What do you see in their formation?" Powell studied the tactical display. "They're creating a sphere around us. Classic envelopment strategy. But there's something odd. They're maintaining exact distances from each other. Almost. Mathematically perfect spacing." A slow smile formed on Harrison's face. "Perfect is predictable, and predictable can be beaten." He pressed the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to engage an enemy force with superior technology and numbers. They think we're outdated. They think we're easy prey. Let's prove them wrong." The bridge crew straightened in their seats, determination replacing fear. "Helm, stand by for evasive pattern Delta," Harrison ordered. "Greg, prepare point defense systems. Kate, keep trying to decode their transmissions." The closest Voidborn ship suddenly flared with purple light, its weapons powering up for a full attack. "Here they come," Harrison said quietly. "Let's show them what humanity's outdated technology can do." Purple energy beams shot from 3 Voidborn ships at once, heading straight for the Defiant. The bridge crew braced for impact. "Hold steady," Captain Harrison commanded, his voice calm despite the danger. Then, just as the beams were about to hit, he gave an unexpected order. "Cut shields. Now." Powell looked at him in shock. "Captain." "Do it," Harrison insisted. Greg Johnson's fingers flew across his console. "Shields down, sir." The purple beams passed through the space where the Defiant's shields would have been. They missed the ship entirely, continuing into empty space. "As I thought," Harrison said with satisfaction. "Their weapons are calibrated to hit shielded targets. They expected us to have standard energy shields." Powell understood immediately. They'd never fought an outdated ship before. Harrison nodded. "Our advantage. Greg, activate the point defense system." Johnson grinned as he pressed a series of buttons. "Railguns online, Captain. Old school and ready to fire." Outside the ship, panels slid open along the Defiant's hull, revealing rows of railgun barrels. These weapons had been considered obsolete for decades, replaced by energy weapons on modern ships. But the railguns had one major advantage. They fired physical projectiles. "Target their weapon ports," Harrison ordered. "Fire when ready." The railguns roared to life, sending thousands of metal slugs toward the nearest Voidborn ship. The projectiles slammed into the alien vessel's smooth surface, focusing on the areas where the purple beams had emerged. On screen, the crew watched as the slugs tore into the black material of the Voidborn ship. Unlike energy weapons that would have been absorbed or deflected, the physical projectiles caused real damage. "Direct hit," Johnson reported excitedly. "Their forward weapons array is damaged." The Voidborn ships seemed to react with confusion. They adjusted position, moving faster now, their perfect formation breaking slightly. "They're adapting," Powell warned. "Changing tactics." Harrison studied their movement. "Kate, how's the decoding coming?" Miller was focused intently on her screen. "I'm starting to understand bits of it, sir. They use mathematical sequences to communicate. And right now, they're confused. They don't understand why their weapons missed." Harrison smiled. "Good. Let's confuse them more. Alan, what about that idea we discussed?" Chief Engineer Rodriguez's voice came over the comm. "Ready when you are, Captain. But I should warn you, this old reactor wasn't designed for what we're about to do." "Noted. Prepare to execute on my mark," Harrison said. He turned to his bridge crew. "Everyone, this might get rough. What we're about to do hasn't been attempted in decades." The Voidborn ships regrouped, all 7 now forming a tight ring around the Defiant. Their weapons glowed purple again, charging for another attack. "They're going to fire from all directions," Hull said. "We can't dodge them all." "We don't need to dodge," Harrison replied. "Alan, now." Deep in the engineering section, Rodriguez pulled a large lever that had been locked in place for years. Warning lights flashed throughout the ship as the fusion reactor at the heart of the Defiant began to pulse in an unusual rhythm. On the bridge, the lights dimmed momentarily, then returned. A low hum built throughout the ship, vibrating through the deck plates. "What's happening?" asked the young helm officer. Harrison held tight to his chair. "We're creating a controlled radiation burst, something modern ships can't do because their safety systems prevent it." Outside, a wave of invisible radiation expanded from the Defiant in all directions. When it reached the void-born ships, their systems flickered. The purple glow of their weapons faded, then returned at half strength. Their sensors are scrambled, Miller reported. They can't target us accurately. The void-born fired anyway. The purple beams shot out in all directions, but most missed the Defiant entirely. One grazed the port side, leaving a black scorch mark, but causing no serious damage. Return fire, Harrison ordered. All railguns target their sensor arrays. The railguns unleashed another barrage, this time striking multiple void-born ships. One of the alien vessels spun out of formation, its smooth surface now marred by dozens of impact craters. Harrison leaned forward in his chair. They expected an easy target. They got the U.S. Defiant instead. Helm, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Let's show them what this old ship can really do. The void-born ships broke their circular formation, 3 vessels pulling back while 4 moved forward in an aggressive pattern. The damaged ship limped away, trailing small pieces of its black hull. They're adapting again, Powell warned, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. 3 ships are retreating to continue the attack on the colony. The other 4 are coming for us. Harrison frowned. We can't let them reach the surface. Helm, pursue the ships heading for the colony. As the Defiant changed course, the 4 void-born vessels moved to intercept. They fired again, this time using shorter bursts of energy that scattered widely. They're using a spread pattern, Johnson reported as the ship shuddered from a glancing hit. Trying to hit us regardless of shields. Harrison nodded. They learn fast. We need a new tactic. He pressed the comm button. Engineering. What's our reactor status? Rodriguez sounded tired but determined. We can't do another radiation burst for at least 30 minutes, Captain. The coolant system is strained. Understood. What about engine power? The old girl still has some tricks left, Rodriguez replied. What do you need? Harrison glanced at Powell. Remember the Titan maneuver from your academy days? Powell's eyes widened. That hasn't been used in combat for 40 years. Modern ships are too large and too dependent on computer guidance. But the Defiant isn't modern, is she? Harrison smiled slightly. And we have human pilots, not AI systems. Powell nodded slowly. It could work. It's crazy, but it could work. Harrison turned to the helm officer. Set course directly between those 3 ships heading for the colony. Maximum thrust for 10 seconds, then cut all power. Every system except life support. The young officer looked nervous but determined. Yes, sir. Harrison addressed the ship. All hands, secure for rapid deceleration. Engineering, prepare for emergency power restoration on my mark. The Defiant surged forward, its old engines pushing beyond safe limits. The ship vibrated violently as it accelerated toward the 3 void-born vessels. The 4 pursuing ships adjusted course to follow. They're gaining, Powell said. All 7 will be on us in 20 seconds. Perfect, Harrison replied. Execute power cut in 3, 2, 1, now. Suddenly, every light on the Defiant went out. The engines fell silent. The ship continued moving forward on momentum alone, now a dark, seemingly dead object drifting through space. On the bridge, emergency lights cast a faint red glow. The crew waited in tense silence. The void-born ships are slowing, Miller whispered, watching her backup scanner. They're confused. Their communication just became very chaotic. Through the view screen, they could see the 3 void-born ships directly ahead splitting apart to avoid colliding with what they thought was a dead vessel. The 4 pursuers also slowed, their weapons powering down as they approached what appeared to be a disable target. Harrison counted under his breath, timing the approach perfectly. When the Defiant was surrounded by all 7 void-born ships, now moving cautiously, he gave the order. Now, Ellen, full power restoration. In engineering, Rodriguez slammed down the emergency power switch. The Defiant roared back to life, all systems coming online simultaneously. The sudden power surge created an electromagnetic pulse that rippled outward. The nearest void-borne ships reeled from the unexpected energy wave. Their perfect mathematical formations collapsed as their systems scrambled to compensate. "Fire all weapons," Harrison ordered. "Target their propulsion systems." The railguns opened fire again, joined by every conventional weapon the Defiant possessed. Without their coordinated defenses, the void-borne ships took heavy damage. One of the alien vessels spun out of control as railgun slugs tore through its engine section. Another lost weapon capability as targeted fire destroyed its main energy conduits. 2 ships disabled, Johnson reported triumphantly. The others are trying to regroup. Powell studied the tactical display. Their formation is breaking down completely. They've never faced these kinds of tactics. Harrison watched as the remaining void-borne ships struggled to reestablish their coordination. They relied too much on their advanced technology and perfect mathematical formations. But space combat isn't about perfection. It's about adaptation. The Defiant surged forward again, positioning itself between the damaged void-borne ships and the colony. "They still outnumber us 5-2, Powell said quietly. Harrison's expression remained determined. "Then we'll just have to be more creative. Prepare for Phase 2. The bridge of the Defiant was filled with smoke from overheated circuits. Emergency repair crews worked quickly to patch damaged systems as the ship continued its fight against the 5 remaining void-borne vessels. "Damage report," Harrison demanded, wiping sweat from his forehead. Powell checked the incoming data. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4, sealed off. Railgun capacity down to 60%. Life support stable. Harrison nodded. "And the void-borne?" "Regrouping," Johnson said, pointing to the tactical display. "They're forming a new attack pattern. Looks like they're going to try to surround us again." The 5 alien ships moved with less coordination than before, but they were still dangerous. 2 took position above the Defiant, while 3 formed a line below. Miller's console beeped suddenly. "Captain, I'm receiving a signal from the colony. Some survivors have reached the emergency communication center." "Put them through," Harrison ordered. The voice of a colony leader filled the bridge. "This is Deputy Governor Frank Wilson. Are you really from Earth? We thought no one was coming." "This is Captain Harrison of the U.S. Defiant. We're here to help, Governor. What's your situation?" "About 8,000 survivors in the deep mining tunnels," Wilson replied, his voice breaking. "The void-borne hit our main city first. We lost so many." Harrison's jaw tightened. "Stay in those tunnels. We'll handle the void-borne." "Captain," Wilson said urgently, "our sensors show they're bringing in reinforcements. 3 more ships just entered the system." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. 8 against 1 were impossible odds, even for the Defiant. Harrison remained calm. "Thank you for the warning, Governor. Defiant out." He turned to his crew. "Ideas, people. We need them now." Rodriguez spoke up from engineering. "Captain, I've been thinking about their ships. They absorb energy, right? Their whole design is built around dealing with modern energy weapons." "That's right," Powell confirmed. "Which is why our physical railguns work against them." "But there's another old weapon they probably haven't encountered," Rodriguez continued. "One so outdated most of the galaxy has forgotten about it." Harrison understood immediately. "The Mark IV torpedoes." "Exactly," Rodriguez said. "Nuclear weapons were abandoned by the Coalition 30 years ago. The void-borne wouldn't have defenses designed for them." Harrison considered this. "We have 6 torpedoes, 8 enemy ships. We don't need to hit each ship individually," Powell suggested. "If we could get them close together." Johnson nodded excitedly. A chain reaction. The blast from one torpedo could disable or destroy multiple ships if they're close enough. Harrison liked the plan, but there was a problem. They won't just line up for us. We need to force them together somehow. Miller looked up from her console. "Captain, I've made a breakthrough with their communication patterns. I can't speak their language, but I think I can send mathematical signals they'll recognize." Can you send false signals? Harrison asked, an idea forming. Make them think it's coming from their own ships. Miller hesitated. Maybe. I can try to mimic their command frequencies. Do it, Harrison ordered. Send a signal that will make them converge on a single point. He turned to Johnson. Prepare the Mark IV torpedoes, all 6. The crew worked quickly. Miller created a false signal while Johnson readied the ancient nuclear weapons. Powell calculated the ideal detonation point, far enough from the planet to protect the colony. Ready, Captain, Miller announced. I've created a signal that should make them think their commander is ordering a regroup. Send it, Harrison ordered. The effect was immediate. The 5 void-borne ships changed course, moving toward a point 10,000 kilometers from the Defiant. The 3 newcomers adjusted to join them. It's working, Powell said in amazement. They're actually falling for it. Harrison didn't waste time celebrating. Helm, take us to firing position. Great, prepare to launch torpedoes on my mark. The Defiant moved silently into position behind a small moon, hiding from the void-borne sensors. On screen, they watched as the 8 alien ships drew closer together, responding to the fake command. Torpedoes armed and ready, Johnson reported. Optimal firing window in 30 seconds. Harrison took a deep breath. This would be their only chance. If it failed, the colony and the Defiant were doomed. All hands, braced for nuclear detonation, he announced shipwide. This is where we make our stand. 8 void-borne ships hovered in space, their black diamond shapes forming a tight cluster as they responded to the false command. On the Defiant's bridge, Captain Harrison watched the tactical display with intense focus. Firing solution locked, Johnson reported. Torpedoes ready. Harrison nodded. Fire torpedoes 1 through 3. The Defiant shuddered slightly as 3 Mark IV nuclear torpedoes launched from its forward tubes. The ancient weapons looked plain and unremarkable compared to modern missiles, just simple metal cylinders racing toward their targets. Torpedoes will reach the target zone in 15 seconds, Powell announced. The Voidborn still haven't detected them. Harrison watched grimly. Hold position. Prepare to launch torpedoes 4 through 6 if needed. On screen, they could see the Voidborn ships suddenly break formation. One of them had detected the incoming torpedoes. They've spotted them, Miller called out. They're trying to scatter. But it was too late. The first torpedo reached the cluster and detonated. A blinding flash filled the screen before the filters darkened to protect the crew's eyes. The nuclear explosion engulfed 3 Voidborn ships instantly. Direct hit, Johnson shouted. 3 ships destroyed, 2 more damage. Before the explosion had even faded, Harrison gave his next order. Launch remaining torpedoes. Target the survivors. The final 3 torpedoes shot toward the scattered Voidborn vessels. The alien ships tried to evade, but they were too close to the first explosion. The second wave of nuclear weapons detonated among them, creating another massive flash. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the explosions cleared. Where 8 powerful Voidborn ships had been, now only debris remained. Small fragments of the black material drifted in space, some still glowing from the intense heat of the nuclear blasts. All targets destroyed, Johnson said quietly, almost disbelieving. A cheer erupted on the bridge. Crew members hugged each other, some wiping away tears of relief. Harrison remained in his chair, his expression solemn despite their victory. Powell approached him. We did it, sir. We saved the colony. Harrison nodded. At a cost. Begin damage assessment. I want reports from all sections. The reports came in quickly. The Defiant had survived, but with severe damage. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Engine power at 40%. Weapons systems mostly offline. Life support stable but strained. We're not going anywhere fast, Rodriguez reported from engineering. But she'll hold together until help arrives. Harrison opened a channel to the colony. Governor Wilson, this is the Defiant. The Voidborn ships have been destroyed. Your people are safe now. Wilson's voice broke with emotion. "Captain, I don't know how to thank you. We're receiving reports from our other settlements. Survivors are coming out of hiding everywhere. The Coalition battle group will arrive in 3 days," Harrison told him. "They'll help with the rebuilding." After ending the transmission, Harrison stood and walked slowly around the bridge, stopping to speak with each crew member, thanking them personally for their courage and quick thinking. Finally, he stood at the view screen, looking out at the stars and the planet they had saved. Powell joined him. The Coalition didn't think this old ship could stand against modern threats. "They were wrong," Harrison said simply. "Sometimes the old ways still have value." 3 days later, the Coalition battle group arrived, led by Admiral Wright's flagship. As they approached the Arcturus system, they were met by an unexpected sight. The battered U.S. Defiant, scared but intact, patrolling the space above the colony. Wright's voice came through on the command channel. "Captain Harrison, I see the Defiant is still in one piece, more or less." Harrison smiled. "She's a bit rough around the edges, Admiral, but she got the job done." "So I see," Wright replied. "The Coalition War Council is reconsidering their fleet modernization policies. It seems older designs might have advantages we've forgotten about." Harrison looked around his bridge, at his tired but proud crew, at the ship that everyone had written off as obsolete. The Defiant hadn't been the newest or the most advanced ship in the fleet, but when it mattered most, she had been exactly what humanity needed. "Ready to bring us home, Captain?" Wright asked. Harrison nodded, his hand resting proudly on the worn railing of his bridge. "Yes, Admiral. The Defiant has earned her rest, but something tells me her service isn't over just yet."